there are two type of partitions. One is a static partition, other one is dynamic partition. So we have seen yesterday about the static partition, right? So we have created some tables and we have loaded some data, and we have created some uh, we created some table and we inserted data as well, right? So there are two ways to insert the data into a partition table. One is a load, other one is insert command. Correct? Correct, guys? Okay. So let's see dynamic partition. Why we need to go with the dynamic partition? Why we need to go with the dynamic partition? Why we need a dynamic partition? Because in the static partition, the dynamic there are some limitations with the static partition. What are they? So you have to write so many load commands, because either load commands or so many load commands or so many insert commands. Why? Insert statements or load statement. Why? Because we are hard coding the values in the static partition. We are hard coding the values in the static partition. If you look at here, see here, to insert the date for 05, I have written one insert statement 061 071. So if I want for 8, I need to write one more. If I want for 9, I have to write one more instruction. What does it mean? I have to write so many insert statements. Let's see here. Suppose I want insert for the Bangalore data. I have to write one load. I have to write, if I want to write for Hyderabad, I need to write one load. I need to write for Mumbai, I need to write one load. So it means the static partition, the values we are hard coding. The values we are hard coding. So when you are hard coding the values, you have to write multiple load or insert statements in a static partition, because we are hard coding the value. We are not fetching automatically. We are creating a partitions. We are creating a partition based on the data. How many partitions you want. Let's say you create a partition based on the date, whether you are creating a three dates, or you are creating a 4 dates, you are creating a 5 dates. Based on the data we are loading, we are creating static partitions, those many parts. So when we will go with the static partition, when you have a limited, let's say I know 3 partitions only there, the 5th, 6th, 7th, only those 5th, 6th, 7th only there. So in this case we can go with the static partition. Okay, then what is the limitations of the static partition? The limitations with the static partition is you have to write so many insert or load commands. You have to write so many insert or load statement. That's the first limitation. The second limitation is there may be a chance where you can commit a mistake. What is a mistake, guys? What is a mistake? Look at, guys, here. So I'm trying to load the data which is belong to India, right? I'm trying to load the data which is belong to India, but what I did, see, because of this the copy paste load commands, right? Either load or insert, it's just we will be writing multiple statements, right? So let's say let's take an example. Here I want to load the data US, UK, India and Canada. Let's assume that. In this case, what I will do, I have loaded the data using commands like this, correct? Using commands like this. Now let's see. I will show you. So here I'm inserting data by fetching from the stage table or temporary table. So we'll call one the original table, like when your data has the partition column. What we will do, we will load the data into other table. We will fetch from other table to partition table, right? So when you suppose I want to load a data, I want to fetch a data from stage table which is belong to US, I will write insert statement like this, correct, by hard coding. So I will say country equal to US and will fetching from the stage table where country equal to US. So there may be a chance what I can do here, if you see in this fourth statement, I'm fetching that I want to load the data into UK, but I'm writing a condition where condition Canada. In this case, what will happen? All Canada data will come into sit into UK, which is wrong. We may commit a mistake. We may commit a mistake. So to avoid these limitations like writing so many insert statements or to avoid the human mistakes, we will go with the dynamic partition. We will go with the dynamic partition. Is this clear, guys? Why we will go with the dynamic partition?
Okay. And this for partition, it should be only one column, or it can be a
You can
multiple
you can
columns.
you can have multiple columns. You can have multiple columns. You can write any number of
Okay.
columns. So if you write a
Columns.
multiple columns,
That time,
yeah,
that should be unique. Value should be unique while loading,
yeah,
even if it is multiple columns.
yes. So if it is a multiple column, see here, you will be creating a top level India. In that you'll be creating one state. In that you'll be creating one city. This means uh, parent directory is your India and parent partition is India. In that sub partition is state. In that sub partition again city.
Okay. In this case, country, state, city.
Yeah,
These three columns is the
yeah,
partition
partition.
combination.
So how
Okay.
it look here? Let's see. When you write multiple partitions, this is your table. Table is nothing but your folder, right?
Yeah.
So in that you are writing one. Let's say I'm taking only one partition to make understand. This partition is for India.
Okay.
In that you write one more state. In that one more state, it means subdirectories. The big directory
Okay.
under the subdirectories. Okay.
Okay.
Any other doubt?
No.
Okay. So what the multiple partition is doing here? When the multiple partition is doing here, so when you're partitioning based on the three categories, let's say you want to partition your where condition is where state equal to country equal to India, where state equal to Karnataka, where and city equal to Bangalore. You want to fetch the only Bangalore data. What you will do? You will write a where condition. The where condition is specifying clearly country should be India, state should be Karnataka, and city should be Bangalore. In this case, what we are doing, it means inside the India, there may be so many states can be there, right? It means your India is a parent level partition. India is your parent level partition. I have something called employee. This is employee table. In this, I have something called India is another partition. Sorry, let's take IN. This is one partition, and US another country, another partition. Again in this India we can have different states, Karnataka, Tamil Nadu, Andhra Pradesh, Kerala, whatever you take, Maharashtra, whatever you take. And US you can have California, New York, you can have a different states. In that each state you can have a different district. It means you are dividing a data into multiple partitions. That's a multi-level partition. Okay. Okay, so because of these limitations, we will go with a dynamic partition. What is the limitations we see? We may commit mistakes while loading the data, while loading or inserting data into partition table. And we need to write so many insert statements, insert or load statement for the each partition. So this is the limitations of static partition. This is the limitations of static partition. Then how we can solve this these limitations by going through dynamic partition. By going through dynamic partition. What is dynamic partition? How it will work? So the dynamic partition is, it will create the partitions dynamically. You don't need to do anything. So you got the data. You got the data from. So what I have done, I have a data which has the employee ID. Let's say, let me take anyway. I'm taking a stock data. Let's take a stock. I got the tick. Tick means the company who is the symbol, the stock symbol, and I got the date. I got the open price. I got the high price. I got the close price, low price, and the low price, and the volume. So this is my data. This is my data. In this data, I want to partition dynamically based on the date. Based on the date. But is the date is a part of your data. So the date is already coming as a part of the data. So if your date, your partition column is already part of the data, what we will do? How we will load the data? There are two cases, guys. We have discussed yesterday also. There are two ways we can load the data into partition table. One is load command, other one is insert command. For the when we will go with the load command, when you don't have partition column in the, when you don't have a partition column in the actual data, original data. And when we will go with insert statement, when we have a date, we have a partition column is part of the date. So when you have a, when you have a partition column as part of your data, what we will do, we will create one temporary table. We'll create one temporary table. We will load whole data in this. We will load all the data in this. We will create temporary table and we will create all the data in this. Then we will create a partition table. Some people will call temporary table, some people will call stage table, okay, or master table. Then we will create a partition table. Then partition table, what we will do in the partition table, we will fetch the records from here. Suppose I'm partitioning by date 5. I'll fetch the 5 records on where condition. I'm fetching the records for the 6th date. I'll fetch records. I'm creating partition for 7th date. I'll fetch the 7th records. So I want to fetch the records 8th date. So this can be done manually as well as dynamically, statically or dynamically. So we have seen how to do that manually yesterday, right? Today we're going to see how to do it dynamically. To do the partition dynamically, so we have to enable something called dynamic partition. We have to enable something called dynamic partition. Let's look at, guys, here. There is something called dynamic.partition. So dynamic.partition, it's a configuration. It's a configuration. By default, it will be disabled. We need to enable it. Why it is disabled by default? Why it is disabled by default? Can anyone tell me? Madhu, Aparna, Akash.
Yeah, it will be burden on the name node whenever we add some data into that, so that it has to manage all those to insert into the respective uh, partition.
Yes. So if it is a dynamic partition is enabled, what will happen? So by mistake, I have written my query. Let's assume that here. If dynamic partition is enabled, okay. So my date, here I am creating by date wise, right? Here I am creating date wise. I created dynamic partition. What I did, dynamic partition I created based on the date. So in a year, we have a 365 dates. Within a year, we have a 365 days. What will happen in this case? 365 partitions will be created automatically. Automatically it will be created, correct? Let's say another use case. The case one is, so if you create a partition dynamically, all the partitions will be created automatically because they will fetch the records from the staging table, right? They'll fetch the records from the staging table. There may be a chance your staging table has 365 days. So it will create 365 partitions in your partition table, it will make a burden on your name node. That is the case 1. Let's take example 2. I'm creating dynamic partition. I'm creating a dynamic partition. Okay. So but what I did, I created partition based on country, and my subdirectory is state, and my subdirectory is city or district, whatever it is. Now when I do this, automatically what will happen when it is fetching the data from staging table? How many countries there? Worldwide we have close to 300 countries. Let's assume that 300 countries. It means 300 sub top level directories. In that each country has state. Each state has again. So if you take US, it has a 53. If you take India, it's take almost I think 29 or 28 or 29. So again in each state again you have so many cities. So what we are doing by default, when you enable by default the dynamic partition is enabled, you are ending up with creating so many so many partitions automatically. It will create so many partitions without your knowledge. Whatever you just did, let's say partition by this. So you star from the stage table, and you just, so you have tried your insert into partition table. The partition is, this is the partition. So as soon as you written this statement, what happened, it will fetch all the data from the stage table and create the dynamic partitions by default. So in this case we will end up with creating so many partitions. So to avoid that, to avoid the unnecessary creating partitions, to avoid the this kind of mistakes, the dynamic partition is by default disabled. By default it is disabled. So we need to enable the dynamic partition by enabling this configuration. There are two ways to enable. Either you can go ahead and change in hivesite.xml, or you can directly set into your console. Right? And also, as soon as you enable the dynamic partition, the dynamic partition comes in two modes. The dynamic partition comes in two modes. The dynamic partition comes in two modes. What are they? The first one is strict mode. Strict mode. Another one is non-strict mode. What is a strict mode? What is a strict mode? The strict mode saying that when you're going to create a dynamic partition, the first top level partition, let's assume that you are writing multiple partitions. Okay, multiple partitions. The strict partition is strict mode is telling that you have to hard code at least one partition. Let's say in this case, country equal to IN. Country equal to IN. I am very much strictly saying that, so you fetch the only records which is belong to country. In that you can leave your state as a dynamic. So if you know country level, so there will be less states. There will be less state, and insert states you can have cities. It means when you're writing a partition statement saying that while you're inserting the data partition country equal to IN, at least you should hard code one, and you can leave state, you no need to hard code, and city you no need to hard code. You should write like this. It means what you are trying to do, you are already hard coded the top level, so there may be less chances you are dynamically creating so many partitions. There are less chances creating so many partitions. There are less chances to create so many partitions. Yeah. So when you say strict mode, at least one partition should be hard coded. That partition should be the first partition. So it means the first partition, the top level parent, should be hard coded. So let's say you didn't hard code the country. You left the country like this and you want to so hard code the state. You cannot do this. You cannot do this. You cannot do this. Okay, the first one should be, once you started with a dynamic, you cannot start with a static. So that's the reason first you need to start with the static, and coming the following should be dynamic partitions. Are you guys able to follow what I'm trying to explain here? Madhu, Anila, Sunil. This is we already discussed. This is second time we were discussing this because there is this long gap, so people are asking me to discuss second time. We are discussing second, since yesterday again. Any doubt? Madhu, Srinivas, Sunil?
No problem, Ravi. Fine.
You're able to follow, right? Aparna?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So first one is you have to enable the partition, dynamic partition, by using this configuration saying that a hive dot execution dynamic partition true, and you have to specify the dynamic partition mode, whether strict mode or non-strict mode. So by default it will be strict mode. By default it will be strict mode. Why it will be by default strict mode? Because to avoid unnecessary creating partitions. And there is another partitions are called maximum dynamic partitions you can create, so you have that limit also. So why these many configurations are there for this thing? It's very simple reason, very simple reason, to avoid creating unnecessary partitions. If you create so many partitions, that will be burden on the name node. Okay, so you can change the value here. You can change to 100 or you can change to 1000, and there is something called dynamic partition per node, that's also there, 1000. The maximum it will allow for 1000. You can go ahead and change it based on it. Sub the parent directory, in that subdirectory, the parent if it's 1000, the sub can be in 1000 in this. So or you can change it, or I can change it. So one mapper, how many partitions can be created while processing one data? One mapper, how many partitions it can create it, right? The dynamic partitions are created by mappers only, right? If you guys observe yesterday, when I'm executing the command, what is when I'm executing the command yesterday, you might have seen while creating a partition, it is the partition is getting created by using map reduce job. Let's look at today. So we'll do execute this program. Okay, so let's look at how we'll write the dynamic partitions. So this is my sample data. Let's assume that I have sample data like this, all text data. It's the same data, guys. Yesterday we have taken data from this one, right? Yesterday we have taken data from here, if you guys remember. This is our yesterday's data. This is our yesterday data, right? This is our yesterday's data. So this data has a multiple date columns. So here two use cases, I mean two scenarios. One is the data itself has a partition column, and some data you are getting without partition column. Some data you are getting without partition column. So this we have seen yesterday, if you guys remember. Okay, so now I'm going to work on this data now by creating a dynamic partition. Yesterday we have created a static partition by hard coding manually. I have done manually. So I have manually hard coded this. If you guys see this, if you guys see this, if you guys see this, I have manually hard coded this, right? So now I'm not going to hard code manually. Now I'm going to write, I'm going to create partitions dynamically. I'm going to create partitions dynamically. Here you have multiple examples. You can have a look up multiple examples. So what the example I'm going to showing you, let me make it another example here. Or else let me put it in here only. So first I have a stock temporary data. If you remember yesterday, I have something called stock underscore temporary data. So let's go ahead and look at that. What is our database name? Show tables. We have something called stock underscore temp. What is this? Look at here. So I have some data here. So I have, I got the 5th date, I got the 6th date, 7th and 8th, rest of the dates also there. So you can see here, not only that data, you can see here, you have a 5th, you have a 6th, you have a 7th, you have a 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th, 13th, you have something called 13th, you have something of 14 and 20, 25 also, 21, 22. Those different dates are there. So here I want to create a dynamic partition. Here I want to create a dynamic partition from this table. So how will I create? Let's look at here. First I need to have a stage table or temporary table. So I will load the whole data into the stage table or temporary table first. So for that we will create a stage table like this and we will load the data. We already loaded this because we already did yesterday static. So while showing you um, while showing you the dynamic partition example, correct? Yes or no? Madhu? So why we need to go with the temporary table, Madhu? Can you tell me? I just want to understand whether you understood or not. Can you tell me why should I create a temporary table to do a partitioning, dynamic partition or not static partition? Why should I create a temporary table? Why can't I directly load into partition table, a temporary table or staging table, whatever you call? Madhu, Aparna, Debashish, Debashish, guys.
So we cannot load directly into the table.
Why?
So we have to use staging table.
Why?
It cannot be created directly.
That's what I'm trying to ask you. Why?
I'm not sure.
Madhu?
Because it doesn't have the partition, it doesn't have the partitioning information, and while I mean,
Okay.
when we directly load the data.
Let me answer for this question, guys. So yesterday we have seen and same thing we are discussing same again now. So I'm repeating the same thing again now. So there are two ways to load the data into partition table. There are two ways to load the data into partition table. The case one, when the data has your partition column. Already your data has the partition column. When you already have a partition column in your date, when you already have a partition column along with your data, along with your data, along with your data, what you need to do? You cannot create a partition table. You cannot directly. You cannot create a partition table directly because the data is part of the partition column. Whatever is selecting is part of already data. So then how can you create? It will be duplicate if you create, right? For that, what we will do? We will create a staging table. We will create a staging table, and we will fetch from the staging table. What is the problem? Guys, this is very much important. We need to understand why we need to create a staging table, why we need to create a temporary table. Let's look at, first try to understand the data. This is my data. Everyone, Akash, Aparna, Debashish, I know you guys have this confusion, right? So this is my data. This is my partition column. Date is my partition column. Yes or no? Here my date is a partition column.
Yes.
So in this case, how I need to create a how I need to create my table, like for partition table, I have to go here. I have to go here. Let me open the news window. Create table stock partition. I'm directly creating partition. I'm showing you what is the problem if I directly create a partition. Partition, and I'm giving a columns here because my data has all the columns. No, my data has all the columns. Yes or no? Ticker or symbol,
Yes.
date, open price, high price, low low price, close price, and volume. I have all the columns in my part of my data. So now I need to create all part here. Tick. I mean, I'm not taking the data types. Like I'm just going date, date, open price, high price, low price, close price, now volume of data, volume, and I need to specify partitioned by again date. I need to specify. Yes or no? And row format delimited,
Yes.
blah blah blah. Forget about that. I need to write like this or not? Madhu, Devashish. If I write like this, what my compiler will tell me, boss, you already created date column. How can you create one more date column here? You cannot create. What is partition is telling? Your partition column should not be part of the table definition column. Yes or no? If you try to create like this, your system will throw an exception saying that, semantic exception saying that you cannot create a date partition as the date is already part of your table definition. You may say, okay sir, here it is date 1. I'll say here date. Here I'll say date 1. Here I'll say date 1. No. No. When you're loading the data, load data in path, you'll give the path into stock underscore partition, stock underscore into table. Let me specify here. Path, stock into table, stock partition, and you will specify what? Partition, partition, date equal to date equal to date 1. So we should not tell date. Date 1 equal to, you will specify some date here. Some date you will specify here. So when you load the data, what will happen? Your table will contain two dates. Your table is containing two dates. Sometimes this date and this date may match, or this date may not match. Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
The partition column is not nothing but a column in your The partition column is nothing but when you are querying from Hive, it is part of the your table only, but it should not be part of the table definition, but it's a part of the table. So where you will be having a two rows with the same date, or sometimes it may not match. Suppose it is 0, 0, 1 and it is 0, 5. It's possible, right? Because it's a static. It's a hard coding value. I'm loading the data. I am loading the data, right? There may be a possibility, right? There may be a possibility. If the if that possibility it is allowing me to do like this, I may commit a mistake. So then in this condition, when I say select star from stock underscore partition, where date equal to which data I need to give here? What are the data appearing in this, or what are the data appearing here? Right? These are the problems. These are the problems with if you try to create. These are the problems are there with you try to load the data directly into a table when your data has a partition column. When your data has a partition column, that's the problem. Next, when your data does not have a partition column like this, it's you can go ahead and create.
One quick question here.
Yeah, go ahead, Madhu.
I'm just trying to understand this. Create table start partition tick date. Like take your example like date 1. You gave the date 1, right? I mean, and when we partition the table and based on the date 1 condition is equal to 2011-050. So all the records which are having this date will be going into that subfolder, right? Creating that folder and going into those records, right?
How it will go? It is not dynamic, right? It is static. You have to specify that. So it means that your path.
Yeah, exactly. While loading this is static, anyway static partitioning that we are doing, but all the records the data which is having the date of 2011-0501, right? Will all those records with that date will go into that folder, right?
Correct.
So yeah, it will create a file like that. So when we query, select star from the table star partitioner where date is equal to either it could be date 1 or date, right? When date 1 is equal to 2011-0501. So all the records of that particular partition will come out, right?
Correct. So when I do this execution, when I do this when I execute this statement, ideally my idea is to fetch the records of the stock underscore this file. Correct?
Yes.
So, but your original data may say something different, right? Your original data may say, let's look at here. You have some other date. You have some other date in it.
Okay.
So,
but the date will go in a different partitioning, right?
How it is it is not going, right? You are doing manually, no?
Yes.
It is not automatically going, right?
Yeah, we are doing it, but with I mean, my understanding is like when the data in that particular file, when we are giving the static loading partitioning, right? My understanding is that in that particular file, with the date matching with the date, all those records will go into this
No.
whatever the file that we are
Okay.
at the back.
So let me put in the simple way, Madhu. So let me put in the very simple way. Suppose you are getting the data with the partition column. It means the partition column has so many dates here. Correct? You have so many dates here.
Yeah.
It's not one partition. It is not belong to one date. Correct? This whole data,
Yes.
whatever the data I was seeing here, is belong to one date or multiple dates?
It's multiple dates.
Multiple dates. Very good. Now, when I write this query like this, it means this file will contain the multiple dates or single date. Stock hyphen 2011. Let's say my file name is stock. So forget about this. My stock file has all the dates.
Yeah.
Now, stock.txt has single date or multiple dates?
Partitioning.
No, here I just shown you, right?
I mean,
This is my, let's assume,
and my
no, Madhu,
yeah, here we have the data. Okay,
I'm
sorry,
talking
go ahead.
about this data only. I'm talking about this data only. Let's assume that this file name is stock. Let's assume that this file name is
Okay.
stock. Okay, this file name is stock. Now, I have given a stock file to you, and I said that create a partition table based on the date. I said to you. Okay, then you don't want to create a stage table. That's the use case we are trying to solve. Without a staging table, how we can call, whether we can create table or not. That's our use case, right? That's what we're discussing. Correct? Yes or no,
Okay.
Madhu? We both in the same page or not? That's
Right.
what I'm trying to
Right.
understand.
You're right.
Right? So now when I have my
Yes,
stock, forget about this is a stock. Do you want assume that this whole data is stock data? Okay. Now what? How will you start create table? You will create table. Okay, create table name and stock partition and take these columns and partition row column row format delimited by blah blah blah. You written. Now you need to load the data into this table, right? Yes or no?
yes, that's true.
So now while loading the data, what you'll do? Load data. If it is a local path, you'll give a local path, whatever it is, local or whatever. So you will load the data. Load local data. In path is this. This is stock.txt.
Mhm.
Now this stock.txt contains a
Okay.
single date or multiple dates.
It contains multiple dates.
Correct. Very good. Now under table partition, you are specifying here single date or multiple date. You are hard coding, no? Date 1.
One date. Single date.
Now when I do select star from the stock partition and where date 1 equal to, let's assume that date 1 equal to this date I queried. Now will I get the results with a combination of multiple dates or single date?
I mean, that's what my second while loading, right? Where I have one. I mean, just I may be confusing. I may be confusing. Just I'm trying to understand
Mm,
this part. So my understanding was when we load the data
mm,
uh, from the file stock.txt, which is having the data as one of the
mm,
column, right?
mm,
So loading that using this partitioning and the date one is also refers to the same date actually, the date data actually, right?
mm.
So when we create the date value 2011-0501, my assumption is that it will pick the data with the date one as 2011-0501 from that file, and it will create a partitioning for that file and then put the data there. I mean, my assumption, my understanding is that.
No, 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 Madhu.
Am I correct?
No, your assumption is wrong. I don't want to say you are right. You are wrong. Your assumption is wrong. Your assumption is
Okay,
wrong
okay, okay, got it. Okay.
because
Then
load command. What the load command is doing? Just taking your file, dumping into some specific folder. Yes or no?
mhm.
There is no intelligence
Correct.
mechanism here. There is no any smart mechanism. Okay, I'll go inside the stock. I look at the specific column. Oh, if the date is matching, then only pick. There is no that much intelligence mechanism here. The
Okay.
load command.
So, okay, so then why the start partition date one we are giving, right? So what it does internally then with the stock partitioning and date one is equal to something we gave, right? The value.
Okay.
It won't use that information.
Okay. So when you are specifying a partition equal to date one, what is your intention is your date your stock has a multiple dates. From that, you have to fetch the only 01 is belong data into one partition, one directory. Let me show you it here. If you remember yesterday we have done this. Okay, let's look at here. So all belong to 5 should go in one place. All belong to 6 should go in one place. All belong to 7 should go in some other place. Correct? Correct?
Mhm.
That's the idea, right? The
Mhm.
partitioning. What is the partitioning? Creating a multiple create.
Exactly.
So in this case,
Exactly. You are right.
so in this case, so if you use a load command, it is not, it does not have to have any no that kind of intelligence mechanism saying that I will go inside the file, I'll look for whether date is matching or not. No, it doesn't have that mechanism. So because
So it will randomly pick the file.
it's not random actually.
So it will randomly pick the
Go ahead, Madhu. Sorry to stop you.
I'm just yeah. So it will randomly pick the records and just put them into partition, or it will dump everything into as is into one file then.
Yes,
Even if you give this partitioning here.
yes, it is not random. It is just a dump. Actually it's not going inside the file. It's not actually looking into the file. What is there inside the file? It is not looking into the file. It is just copying the file into copy paste. You are copying from local path, you're pasting into HDFS path. If you understand our
Okay.
management,
Even if you give
yeah, even if you give partition date here, but the what is the difference make?
that.
What is the difference here it makes? So normally when you say load command, it will load under the stock partition. Correct? Stock partition is a directory, right? If you don't have
Correct.
this, what will happen? The data directly will go under user Hive warehouse slash test 530 slash stock
Start
underscore
slash the
partition.
date.
Then not date, directly it will go stock. You are not given partition. No, I removed partition here. If you
Yeah.
see, right?
Oh,
Dot
okay.
txt.
Okay.
This is the if you don't give a partition. Correct?
Okay.
If you give a partition, what is happen?
Under that stock partition, it will create one more folder that
Yes.
with that date, and then it will
Yes.
give.
Yes. Yes. It'll just create. It'll just create.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, I cleared. I'm clear on that one.
Yeah. So here when you say partition and I mean I'm just completing this. I don't want to leave it in middle. So 2011 something you did like this. In this what is happening? Very simple. Nothing. It's nothing. Smartness here. Just what it is doing. It is creating one date here and it's dumping the stock again the same. Again the same.
Okay.
Okay. So when your data has a partition column with multiple values, you have to go with some stage table. You create a stage table. So if you create a stage table, what will happen? I create a stage table. Stage stock stage, and I have all the columns. So I'm not writing all the columns. I have all the columns and partitioned by I did date. So here my sorry, it is stage table, right? Stage table does not have the partition. Partition, row format, and lead imitation. Then just blindly go ahead and load the data like this. Blindly load the data because that's what we need here. I don't need partition. In the stage table, I don't need partition. Just blindly load the data in this. After loading the blindly into this, create a partition table. Create stock partition. Now you specify here what are the columns you want as part of what are the columns you want to part of your stock table. Specify those columns and partition by you specify your column here date and row format. Now write insert command here. Insert into stock underscore partition and my partition is date equal to this. Select from stage where date equal to this. Now what will happen? Only this specific date belong to data only it will fetch. Now it has a smartness because your insert command will launch the MapReduce job. Your load command is not launching a MapReduce job. If you remember, if you execute any commands before, your load command is not launching any MapReduce job. What it is doing, it's just copying from the one place to another place. Now if you do insert command, what will happen? Based on this condition, it will go inside this table, stage table. It will fetch the records which is matching this condition and put into this partition. So in this case, it will create like this only. It will create like this only. In this case, it will create like this only, but it will not be like this. It will be 0 0 0 0. And tomorrow, and second statement. After that insert statement, you thought to, okay, let's go with 2. I don't want one is completed. Let's go with 2. Second date. So in this case, it will create like this. Now you have a proper partition data. Understand, Madhu?
Yeah, I'm clear.
Okay.
Yeah, I thought that the intelligence will be there loading itself when
No.
you give the conditions there.
No. No.
Got it now. Because we have to fetch those records only and insert into the specific partition, each partition.
So it shows that yesterday you didn't concentrate, and yesterday's example you didn't practice.
Yeah, I did not.
Please practice it. Until you practice it, you will know. See, this you need to observe something like while loading, whether it's launching a MapReduce job or not. While I'm inserting, whether it's loading a MapReduce job or not. We need to understand those things. Okay. So please, guys, I request you to please practice one more time, and we will continue the dynamic partition tomorrow as well. So we had a nice discussion, but the example we'll see tomorrow. Okay, it's already the next batch people are start coming. So okay, so very simple. So if you want, you can also try it. You create one stage table. So okay, so we already done. Let finish this. We already created stage table. So we need to fetch only the the records from there. We need to fetch records from there, nothing else. Partition the date, I'll say underscore dynamic. Dynamic. In the dynamic, non-static, non-strict. In the dynamic, there are two things. One is a strict mode, other one is a non-strict mode. So here I'm going to show you. Okay, table not found. Okay, the insert command has wrong table name, so it should have a temp table. My insert should command temp table. Dynamic partition strict mode. Okay, I need to change it to non-strict. I need to change to non-strict. Because I'm creating dynamically, I'm not hard coding the value. If you look at here, I'm not hard coding the value here. I'm not hard coding the value here. So it should be non-strict mode. Now look at, guys, it is launching a MapReduce job. Now it is smartly working internally. It is smartly fetching the records. It is smartly fetching the records. So when the load command, no, it will not launch any MapReduce. It will blindly load the data. Please practice, guys. Yes, please go through the yesterday's session as well as today's session. Please practice the class by tomorrow class. So we'll be starting tomorrow bucketing.
Yes.
Okay. Now go here and manually look into this. So I have created something called dynamic. If you look at here, all are created dynamically. I have created manually. These are all created dynamically. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 21, 22, 23, 24. All these are created dynamically. And from where it is fetched? It is fetched from the temp table from this table. So in this table you have only one file. In this table you have only one file. So here we have only one file which has the multiple dates. But when I see in this, dynamic partition, see here multiple dates are there. Is this clear, Madhu? So if you go inside this file, you can see only fifth related date.
Yeah, I got it.
Debashish, what about others? Look at here. It is belong to only fifth. It is belong to only fifth. How can I say it is belong to fifth or not? Because here you are not taking the date, date as part of this. So that's why your data does not have the date, but your what you call your folder has the date. And if you want, you can cross check AME APPL is belong to fifth date or not. In our actual data, AME is belong to date fifth, APPL is belong to fifth, AAW is belong to fifth. Let's look at your data as well. AME, APPL, AAW, right? Only fifth data only came into this. Only fifth data only came into this. Clear? Okay. So if you want, one more thing you can do, guys, here. Okay. And one more thing you can do here. What is that? In your this table, right? If you want, you can add the date column as well. So we will see that how you'll add. Okay, we will see in the next class how to add. You can specify that. So here I'm not specifying the columns, right? I can specify the columns, which column I want to fetch it here. We can do that. Okay, is this clear? I hope it's clear. So so we will continue the next session. Okay, by the time please practice these things.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Bye.